Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Anthony. This Saturday bonus episode is a recording of an interview we gave on another podcast. Regular Words and Numbers episodes come out each Wednesday.
Welcome to Room 101 at Harrigan Compound West. It's story time. So I'm smoking some Fusilier's Ration tonight, which is a Hearth and Home mix, Ross Willett again. And these blends are generally so good when I have them for the first time that they become favorites very quickly. Fusilier's Ration, when I first had it, and this was jarred up in December of 2020, so not that long ago. I thought it had some potential, but had real rough edges. And I wanted to see if giving it some time might even it out a little bit. So here we are. And I wouldn't refer to these as rough edges anymore. I don't know what the right description is. I'll try and think of it as we sit here together. But it is different than it was when I put it in the bottle the first time. I thought maybe I would tell you a story of the grown-up Harrigan, which, these stories aren't nearly as good. But sometimes the co-stars really drive the story. So, and so it is with this one. It was, when was it? 2005. And I was moving into our newly purchased home in Western Pennsylvania, Greensburg, Pennsylvania, to be exact. And, it was, I got there first and none of the furnishings had arrived yet. And my family was still at some distance back in New York, or probably at that point in Connecticut with their grandparents. But there I was with really not much of an option, so I balled up a towel, if memory serves, and used it as a pillow and slept on the floor. And of course, I didn't have window treatments in the place, so the minute the sun hit my face, I was up for the day at a very absurd hour. And, I thought, well, this is great. Got this brand new house. Life is good. I got a great new job. And it was really one of those periods where everything looked to be getting just instantaneously better. And I went downstairs and I opened the front door and I walked out. And I went to look at my house the first day I was in it. And somebody had come and thrown eggs all over it. It was just piled high. And the sun, of course, had baked those eggs into the vinyl and into the brick. And it was hard to see how I was going to get those out. So I had to get all the way down to the Walmart around the corner and buy some telescopic scrubbing device so I could start getting the eggs off my new house after day one. And I'm thinking, what the hell did I do to piss somebody off in one day? And so I'm scrubbing it out, and the girl from across the street, she came over, and she was very kind, and she said, "Oh, what happened?" And I said, "Well, it looks like somebody unloaded a dozen eggs on my house." And she said, "I kind of think that this was meant for your neighbors." And I said, "Why would you think that?" And she said, "Because they're assholes and everyone knows." And there was this undercurrent of real hostility. And I thought, okay, put it in the back and we'll try to figure out what's going on there. And the woman was getting angrier and angrier. And she said, "Last year, they called the police on me." Now, we don't have police in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which means we have state police. She called the state police to report that the neighbor's tree was depositing leaves in her yard in autumn. I don't even know what to say about that. Of course it was. That's what trees do in autumn. But she seemed to think, the neighbor that is, seemed to think that nobody else's leaves should come into her yard or she'll somehow find legal recourse. I mean, this was the level of lunacy we were dealing with here. And I'm kind of writing this off, and I'm thinking there's no way these people are this crazy. But lo and behold, I was bringing the lawn clippings all the way down to the back corner of my property, where there was a pretty gigantic pine tree. And underneath the pine tree, I would throw all the clippings. This is the stuff from the lawn, the trimmed hedges, right? Things like this. The weeds that grew here and there. I just put them all down there and let them ferment, as you do. And she started yelling at me one day. And she said, "You're ruining my view with that pile." And I thought, tough shit. My yard, my tree, my clippings. I said, look, there's no way you can see this, not from anywhere on your property. And frankly, I don't care if you could. And that's when the war started. I had no idea the idiocy I was unloosing upon the world. But she started to slowly lose her mind about this pile of clippings. And she had what can only be described as the most henpecked husband in the world. She would bark out instructions at him, and he would just do as he was told. And he tried making nice with me, and I have to admit, I thought he was actually a pretty nice guy. His name was Adam, but he was between a rock and the hard place, where there was no way for him to be able to satisfy this lunatic he married once upon a time. And she would occasionally yell at him enough that he would come over and try to prevail upon me to go find somewhere else to put my yard clippings, but of course there wasn't any place else. This was the logical place to put them. And I said, look, there's really no way I'm going to do this, so you go home and take whatever medicine you got to take, because that's where the clippings live now. And he left, and I thought I would never hear from him again on this. Until one day, very early in the morning, I heard that faithful thumping of a hammer onto things. I don't really like to think about hammers at 8 o'clock in the morning, but there was Adam outside installing a brand new fence that would prevent them from having to look at the eyesore that was my pile of clippings underneath a tree on my own property, so far away from them that they couldn't see it already. And I thought, well, good fences do probably make good neighbors, so let's get it up and see where we're at. And he put the entire thing up, and we didn't really hear any more from them. And I thought that was the perfect conclusion to a very imperfect set of circumstances. Until one day my in-laws came to visit. And my father-in-law is easily one of the nicest human beings I have ever met. He is a genuinely sweet human being. And he was there, and he's a wizard with all things building, houses, cars, right? If ever a man was destined to fix shit, it's my father-in-law. And he was looking around. He was wearing his shorts. It was nice out. And he's looking at the fence, and he said, when did that go up? And I told him the whole story. And as if on cue, the horrible woman in the house next door came out and started yelling at my father-in-law. She referred to him as an old goat and told him to go back where he came from. I don't know if this meant Georgia or if this meant Canada. I don't know. This was the nonsense that spewed forth from her mouth. And when he told me about it, he said, you know, that lady next door was really getting on my case. And he was laughing about it, so he didn't take it all that hard. But he said, listen, that fence that they built, it's facing the wrong way. It's almost universal that code will inform you that if you're going to build a fence, the unfinished side has to be inside for your view, whereas the finished, the nicer side, needs to be pointing out for your neighbors. And I just tucked that away. Okay. And then one day I was sitting at my house, and there was a knock on the door, and there was a woman there, and she said, hi, I'm from the town manager's office. She said, I'm here to find out what's going on with your pile of clippings. And I thought, well, ain't that some shit right there? This should have been over before it even started, but it really should have been over the day the fence went up. But here we were, and I had to show the woman where the pile of egregious clippings was. And I said, well, here it is. And I said, here's my property line. I said, I can't see a single way that this is my problem. It's on my property. It's my stuff. What's the problem here? And she looked at it and said, you know what? There is no problem here. And I thought, well, local government doing a good job. Who would have thought? And then she let slip that the people next door had called the town manager, well past midnight at his house to complain about other things, probably leaves flying in from every direction onto their yard. And I said, well, seeing as how you're here, take a look at the fence, because they put that up not too terribly long ago. And I wasn't going to say anything, but seeing as how you're here at their request, maybe you should have a look at the fence, because I think they're going to have to tear it down because they've got the unfinished side facing out. I said, isn't that right? Doesn't that not conform to code here? And she said, you know, it absolutely doesn't. I'll call them tomorrow. Yay, I win. And so she did call. And that poor bastard married to that lunatic, he was out there the next day actually ripping out the fence all the way around the house. It covered his property on 3 sides. And I became a bit of a legend in the neighborhood at this point. And the woman who lived on the other side of them stopped by as she walked that evening, and she said, are you the guy who reported the fence? And I said, indeed I am. And she said, thank you. It's been wonderful watching him work all day for no good reason. And I thought, yep, that's right. Sometimes justice has this way of emerging. It doesn't happen often, so you've really got to drink it in when it does. But there we were. So, Fusilier's ration. It's not as good as the other Hearth and Home products. Of that I have no doubt. Right? So if you're looking for something, you're going to go to Black House or White Knight, and you're going to be very, very happy with those. This is a clear step below. It's not a bad tobacco. It's actually got a bit of a floral hint to it, which you can smell, and it's nice. If this were the only open thing I had, I would smoke it. It's good. It's just not great like some of the others. So take it for what it's worth. Maybe give it a try and see if your experience is the same as mine. I suspect it will be, but different strokes. We'll see you next week.
H-A-R-R-I-G-A-N spells Harrigan, proud of all the Irish blood that's in me.
And one thing that I did notice when we first moved into the house, after that first day when the neighbor, her name was Janine, she was very sweet, very kind, after she told me the story of how the neighbors arouse the hatred in almost everyone they deal with, I realized that there was this light there, and it was like looking into the sun at night. It was on top of their house, and it was angled out. It hit my bedroom, and then it hit the street. And I immediately cordoned that off with blinds. We got rid of it from my life. But you could actually hear it humming. And apparently, when I asked what the story was with this, it came to be the case that someone, at some point in the not-too-distant past, had lobbed a brick through their front window. So irritated were all the other Greensburgers, I think that's what we call people from Greensburg, with these 2 idiots who lived next door. I never really picked up a brick and threw it through their window myself, but God knows I wanted to, which probably means that there were a lot of people who really wanted to. And the price we paid for that first guy who did it was this humming, fluorescent, piercing light that sat there night after night after night, and you could actually hear the hum. And that's just how it goes. But again, good fences make for good neighbors, right? That Twain fella had himself a point. In this case, really, really, really made for good neighbors, because I got to stick the knife in and twist it pretty hard. I don't get vindictive like this. Usually I'm not this petty as a rule, but with these folks, I was both petty and vindictive. And I'm happy that it worked out the way that it did. I'll see you next week.